Welcome to this Conversations on Groong episode. Today we're talking with Dr. Benyamin Poghosyan about the role of China and BRICS in a rising multipolar world order, China's views towards the South Caucasus, and implications for Armenia. We'll also touch upon the October 26 parliamentary election results in Georgia. Hello, Benyamin. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Benjamin.
Hello, Asbed. Hello, Hovik. As always, pleasure to be with you and thanks for having me.
Thank you. Great to have you on board. So, in recent years, there have been a lot of discussions at academic and expert levels, as well as political circles, about the transformation of the current world order from the unipolar system, which emerged after the end of the Cold War in 1991, into a more complex multipolar security architecture. China, as well as BRICS, are viewed as driving forces in this transformation. So let's start with China. You recently attended the 11th Beijing Zhongshan Forum in China back in September. This event is sponsored by the China Association of Military Science. It has also links to the Chinese Defense Department. And this year, it brought together participants from over 90 countries. We're going to include some links to this event as well as the agenda and everything. So please check podcast.groong.org/episode number to see more details. But the key topics included things like global and regional security, U.S.-China relations, global South, etc., etc. Benjamin, what were your key takeaways from this forum?
Thank you, Asbed. Yes, this is one of the biggest forums on foreign policy and geopolitics, organized in China. It's an annual forum. I guess started probably some 10 years ago. Then there was a break for 2020, 2021, and even 2022, because China was under quarantine for approximately 3 years. And then they restarted. Yes, a lot of officials, a lot of Ministry of Defense, other people, even Armenian Ministry of Defense was there. And also a lot of experts, mostly from Global South, Asia, Africa, South America, but also European experts, not top ones, of course, but also some experts from Europe and also from the United States. So key takeaways. First, Chinese experts, at least whom I spoke with, they are sure that both United States and Russia are declining powers. And it's interesting notion, because they say even despite the recent successes of Russia on the front line, I mean, we all see that at least in the last 6 months, Russia had an advantage. They are slowly moving forward, but from Chinese perspective, in long run, Russia is declining power, demography, economy, everything. So from them, Russia is declining power, but also they view the United States as a declining power or even as a declining empire. And they say that, of course, US is much stronger than Russia and in much better position than Russia. But at the end of the day, both United States and Russia are declining powers. So from their perspective, the power shift from the west to the east, or I don't know, from Europe or from Euro-Atlantic area to the Asia, it's going on, it started, and no one can stop them. They feel that Americans, or at least US leadership, tries to somehow, if not stop the process, but at least to slow down the process, so the US will be able to enjoy its primacy longer and longer. But strategically, from their perspective, at the end of the day, US is a declining empire, and Russia is a declining empire. So this is a first perception. And when they say US is declining empire, they understand the whole West. So it's not only the United States, it's Canada, it's European Union, and even they are like Asian allies, for example, like Japan, South Korea. For them, this whole Pax Americana, if you agree that there was or there is a Pax Americana after either 1945 or 1991, this whole Pax Americana slowly is going down. But it does not mean that Pax China or whatever is coming up. From their perspective, any global hegemony is not going to happen for a very long period. So after the complete end of US hegemony or unipolar world, we will find ourselves in a multipolar world when US declining but still strong enough, Russia declining a little bit weaker than United States but still strong enough, a lot of other big powers like India, Brazil, middle powers, And also we'll see, as a result of all this, more instability, probably more conflicts in different regions, more conflicts for regional hegemony or regional rivalry. Even there is such a term, regionalization of globalization, like it will be regional groupings. And also there will be many ad hoc groupings, like the era of permanent alliances are going down. They are not working. Like NATO still, yes, NATO is there, but even from Chinese perspective, even NATO will face more and more problems because it's growing bigger, and if many countries joining or has joined NATO, to get a unified position will become harder, especially as United States declines. And from their perspective, US was a glue which somehow forced all NATO members to agree on something, regardless if something is for good or bad. So yes, world will be multipolar.
Benjamin, does China believe that NATO is going to face problems internally?
Yes, they think that as US power will decline, and the US is the main driving force behind NATO in case of like US wants something and US still able to force another. Now I think NATO are 32 members after Sweden and Finland joined. Still, US is powerful enough to force everyone else to follow the same line. But as US will continue to decline, NATO will reach a point when US will not be able to serve as a glue, and then it will be more and more difficult to come into a unified decision because there will be more powers with different views on different issues. And if US is not strong enough to say, okay, I don't care what do you think, but this should be our unified line and all NATO members should vote or should do this or that, then NATO also may face some internal problems. No one's speaking about NATO's breakup, at least in the foreseeable future, but they also believe that some internal divisions or disagreements, or at least lack of cohesion, may happen with NATO, let's say like 10 or 15 years from now. But and another interesting thing, when you speak with Chinese experts and you ask, okay, when you speak about multipolar world, like what poles do you see in general? It was interesting that they are speaking that currently we can divide world into three distinct phases. One is West. This means United States, NATO, EU, and some Asian allies like Japan, South Korea, Australia, UK, and etc. So this is the West. There is an anti-West, and as of now, anti-West is Russia, is Iran, is North Korea, is Syria, Nicaragua. This is anti-West, which directly is at war with the West. We're speaking as of now, like October 2024, there is a West, there is an anti-West, which is in war with the West, and there is a non-West. And interestingly, they put China not in the camp of anti-West, but they put China, India, other Asian nations, Brazil, Africa, almost all more or less great or middle powers. Of course, like what Armenia or this type of country think is not very much important from global geopolitical perspective, but any other major and middle power from Chinese perspective, they are grouped in the name of non-West. So it's interesting because there are a lot of talks, even in Western media and Western expert community, about the so-called axis of autocrats, axis of upheaval, which put China, Russia, Iran, North Korea as an anti-West. But many Chinese are telling that there is a significant difference between Chinese perspective on world order and Russian perspective on world order, because Russia is in a war with the West. Russia believes that West wants to destroy Russia, and Russia wants to somehow destroy this international order, US-led international order, while China is not interested to completely destroy this US-led international order because China significantly benefited from this international order, including economic rules. From Chinese
most of the
perspective,
rise of China has been since 1991.
Yes, from their perspective, China significantly benefited from the international order, especially if we speak about economic order, globalization, World Trade Organization, and etc. So China benefited from it. And if you pay attention, now China is criticizing United States for violating WTO rules, putting tariffs or export restrictions on China regarding these advanced microchips or etc. So they are telling China does not want to destroy the system. China simply wants to become a more influential player within system. Like they say, okay, we are strong enough economically, and also we are becoming stronger enough militarily. So we want to be one of the key players inside the system. We want the ability to influence the system, and we want the ability to change the system if needed. So there is a difference. Like Russia would like to destroy system for whatever reasons, but China and other non-West part of the globe, they don't want to destroy system. Simply, they want to have ability to be part of decision making in the system, and sometimes also be able to influence the system or amend the system. So this is a interesting thing that in China, no one says that, okay, China and Russia 100% aligned on foreign policy. Definitely no, despite all these official talks about no limit friendship, which, like the declaration which was signed in early February 2022 during Beijing Winter Olympics, when President Putin was in Beijing just before start of the war in Ukraine. So this is very briefly what some Chinese experts, of course, what I'm telling, this is not like an overwhelming position of Chinese experts or Chinese state position. And in China, there are many think tanks, all de facto are state affiliated, some de jure state affiliated, some act as an independent, but run by like former high-level military guys, like 2 3-star generals. And it's most probably, we all understand that they have some connections with China state. So I'm not in a position to say that this is a absolute majority of Chinese expert community, which are tens of thousands of people. There are think tanks in China who has like few hundred, even few thousand full-time research fellows. But what I'm telling is what I discussed with some Chinese experts who were in Beijing, and also what were some discussions within the conference regarding what is going to happen or how China views the next 10, 15, 20 years of global developments.
Benjamin, how does China actually view the South Caucasus in its worldview?
Good question. My understanding is that it's not the priority, and there is a significant lack of expertise. Because even if you go to some Chinese think tanks, which have division, which is called, for example, Central Asia and South Caucasus, and then you meet people and say, okay, you are working in this think tank, but you work in the unit on Central Asia and South Caucasus. Yes. So have you been in South Caucasus? Many people say no, or we have been only once in the region. Mostly they are focused on Central Asia. So there is a lack of expertise in Chinese think tank community about South Caucasus, because mostly South Caucasus is either connected to Central Asia or even more broader, like Russia, Eurasia. And despite in the units names, you will see name also the South Caucasus, like Russia, Eurasia, South Caucasus, or I don't know, Eastern Europe, Russia, Central Asia, South Caucasus. But if you go deeper, you see that many experts are focused either on Russia or on Central Asia, which means that still South Caucasus is not a top priority or even a priority, because otherwise Chinese state will allocate resources. Then in the universities, people will start to defend bachelor or master or PhD theses on the region. Funds will be allocated for these future experts to come to the region, even to study the languages like Armenian, Georgian, Turkish, or other. So as of now, it's not a priority, at least as an expert community. But when we look into the interstate relations, we see that China signed free trade agreement with Georgia back in 2017, and I guess it entered into force in 2018. Then in 2023, China signed a strategic partnership agreement with Georgia. In summer 2024, China signed strategic partnership agreement with Azerbaijan. So from this perspective, despite there is a significant lack of understanding of South Caucasus, of its problems, like where there are conflicts, what are the conflicts, Nagorno-Karabakh, Abkhazia, South Ossetia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, lack of understanding, but China as a state slowly but coming to the South Caucasus, because when you sign agreement on strategic partnership with any country, then Chinese bureaucracy starts to work. Like Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Economy, even Communist Party, like the country being put into some channel or into the pipe, and then this pipe starts to work. One thing which was interesting, and some Chinese experts asked, but okay, why we do not have a strategic agreement with Armenia? Like, okay, there are three internationally recognized or fully internationally recognized republic in South Caucasus. So Georgia signed with us strategic agreement in 2023. Azerbaijan signed with us strategic partnership agreement on 2024. Even if these just are declarations, and as of now, maybe there is no significant substance in these declarations, but still documents are signed. While Armenia has no such a document with China. So this issue also raised, and my understanding was that this is not the Chinese decision not to sign something with Armenia, because from Chinese perspective also they slowly started to understand that alliances, or let's call them partnerships, they are important because they see how United States exploit its alliances or partnership all over the world.
Yeah.
So from their perspective, okay, if United States was successful, also because of partnerships, global partnership or global alliances, and this helped the United States to become absolute hegemon, at least after 1991. And even if now US is in decline, still for the foreseeable future, he will be number one superpower in the world. Then also China should establish some partnerships. And as a first step, okay, let's sign strategic partnership agreement, even when there is a lack of substance. But in general, I don't feel that South Caucasus is who might matter too much for China, at least as of now.
When you were discussing the view of China on NATO, it occurred to me that maybe the United States itself is realizing this because with Trump saying basically, with the United States basically bankrolling NATO, it doesn't see that it can keep up with this kind of expense for the next 25 years. And maybe that is why Trump was asking the European Union to start pitching into its own defense so that the overall amount of global defense that the West can bring together increases significantly.
Could be. Could be that at least Trump or people that are advising Trump, they also see these problems. And let's not forget that Trump, at the end of the day, it's Trump who threatens he will withdraw US from NATO starting from 2017. But at the end of the day, it was Trump who was able to force many NATO member countries at least to reach this 2% threshold,
Which
2%
was,
of
I
GDP
think, the
to be
goal.
spent. Yes, which was the goal. And this goal was agreed during Obama time. But frankly speaking, in this case, we have to accept that what was agreed under Obama administration, but Trump was significantly quite successful to convince or force many NATO members to raise their defense spending.
Benjamin, one more question. At the BRICS summit, there was a meeting between Narendra Modi and President Xi of China, and it sparked a lot of speculation that potentially there might be a rapprochement between China and India. I'm just wondering how realistic that is. And you said that essentially the Chinese view India as part of the Chinese pole, essentially. They view India together with China in the same pole. So can you tell us a little bit more how Chinese experts view the future relationship between China and India?
Yes, regarding India, I would say not in the same pole, but in the same grouping like non-West. It's not the case that this non-West is led by China, which means that India somehow is subordinate to China. But yes, from Chinese perspective, China, India, Brazil, and many other big or middle powers, they are in this grouping of non-West, who are not the West, but also who are not waging a war against the West as Russia. From China perspective, they are telling that, okay, in general, we have respect to India as one of the oldest civilizations in the world. We understand that India is a great civilization. It's a growing country, quickly growing country from both in economic and military terms. And we understand that we are like two giants of old civilizations and we are going to be neighbors. The main concern of China is that the United States will try to use India as a way to deter or contain China. Even some Chinese experts were telling that from their perspective, United States and the United Kingdom would like to use India against China the same way as the US and UK are using now Ukraine against Russia. So this is their main concern. And they say that, okay, we hope that Indian political leadership, especially current leadership, will not allow to US and UK transform India into just a tool or toolkit to contain or put pressure on China. But regarding the BRICS summit, yes, this meeting was very important, and also they reached an agreement to start to de-engage militarily in the Ladakh region. Just to say that there are some territorial disputes between India and China, and in 2019 and in 2020 there were some clashes in different areas of the border. There is an agreement there that no one should use arms like shooting guns or whatever, but even using the hands. There were several Indian and Chinese soldiers killed, and still then tensions are high between two countries. But the important thing is that in Kazan, as a result of the Prime Minister Modi and the President Xi meeting, China and India agreed to disengage troops at least from the Ladakh region. And Ladakh region is one of the areas when there was these border disputes. So this was, I think, significant achievement, which de-escalate tensions, which we saw in China-India relations in last at least 4 or 5 years. This is a positive thing. And of course, we cannot exclude also that somehow President Putin was mediator or facilitator of this meeting and this agreement. But again, strategically, at least what I was heard in Beijing, that China does not view India as an enemy. China respects India as an old, great civilization, as a great nation and great power, which now is in a quick economic and military development pace. But the only concern of China is that the United States and United Kingdom may use India against China the same way as they are using now Ukraine against Russia. It does not automatically mean that there should be war between India and China, because they are giants and both have nuclear weapons. Like, it's figuratively. I'm not meaning that, okay, India will attack China or there will be India-China war, but like to use India as a tool to weaken China or contain China or create problems for China.
Well, let's continue then to the BRICS summit, which happened last week. Top leaders from over 36 countries convened in Kazan, Russia, for the annual BRICS summit. This organization has gained a lot of traction in the past 5 to 6 years, but I believe it has been around for almost 2 decades now. And it promises to be an alternative to Western-led governance platforms, whether in politics, finance, or other aspects of international rule. At least from what I was able to follow you on social media, you were covering the summit pretty closely. So can you let us know your overall impressions of the summit? And more specifically, this year, the summit expansion of this BRICS organization was on the agenda. There currently, BRICS has 9 permanent members, and during the summit in Kazan, the agreement was reached to add 13 countries as partners, among them Turkey. What is the role of BRICS in the emerging multipolar world order?
On the BRICS summit, I think it had 2 target audience and 2 messages. Message number 1, this was Russian message to the West. Then after 2.5 years of all your efforts to isolate Russia, to weaken Russia, or even strategically defeat Russia, you failed. And President Putin was sitting in Kazan, like more than 20 leaders were there, including UN Secretary General, while the UN Secretary General refused to take part in peace conference organized by Ukraine and Ukraine's Western friends. So one meaning and one message was like specifically West-targeted message from Russia that, guys, you completely failed. And also probably message to Ukraine that, look, your patrons failed to isolate Russia while they are putting efforts to do that in last 2.5 years. So, like, make your own calculations. Do you still believe that with the support of West, you can defeat Russia? So this was one message. And second message was that BRICS is becoming more and more functional organization. Initially, there were 4 countries, then South Africa joined, I guess, in 2010, and then expansion happened in 2023. Originally, 6 countries were going to join, but then the new president of Argentina stated that he's not going to join, but then Saudi Arabia also said that, okay, still I'm not a full member. So yes, now BRICS has 9 permanent members. It's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and then these new members, including Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and United Arab Emirates. Then decision was made that even these 9 countries are quite big, so the decision was made that the expansion of BRICS in terms of accepting new permanent members will be stopped for next years or maybe even for next decade. But then also the decision was made late introduce the new category of BRICS membership, the so-called partner countries, BRICS partner countries. And during the Kazan summit, this was approved, and then certain countries applied to become BRICS partner country. There is no decision, official decision yet that all these certain countries already became partners of BRICS. There should be negotiations. Russia, at least until the end of this year, as far as Russia is chairing the BRICS. And then in 2025, the next chair of the BRICS will continue negotiations. But certain countries apply to become BRICS partner, but we know that many other countries would like to, at least they are discussing the possibility to join the BRICS as a partner countries, again, not as a permanent or full members. And yes, Turkey is among these 13. Azerbaijan expressed its desire to join BRICS back in August 2024, immediately after President Putin's state visit to Azerbaijan. It was interesting to not see Azerbaijan's name among these new partner countries, but in any case, growing number of countries would like to become more closer to the BRICS. Of course, 2 issues were discussed before the summit and during the summit. The one idea was that, okay, very preliminary, but let's discuss the possibility of having some joint BRICS currency sometime even 30 years from now. But then it became obvious that this idea is too raw, even to discuss it in the long-term perspective, because we understand that these are different countries, different political system, different economic system, and just look how much Europe spent, how many decades until they reached and created the common currency euro. First, there's only digital currency and then actual hard paper currency, while in Europe, all countries were more or less closer to each other. So the idea to have like common BRICS currency, my understanding is that idea is dropped now. Maybe it will come back later. But what is being discussed to establish this alternative SWIFT system, a system for financial transactions, because currently, despite the fact that SWIFT is a Belgium-based organization, but the US has significant influence on SWIFT based on the role of dollar as a global reserve currency. And we see how United States using SWIFT as an effective tool on putting sanctions or pressure on countries, telling that, okay, I will cut you from SWIFT, and then you will face very negative economic implications. Like Iran is cut from SWIFT, many Russian banks are cut from SWIFT. So this SWIFT system, which allows to make interbank payments all over the world, has effectively becomes a tool at the hand of the West, and in particular for the United States, to punish countries or threaten to punish or put pressure. So now discussions are underway that some sort of alternative SWIFT is needed, which means that all countries who want to continue to be part of SWIFT will continue to be part of SWIFT, but then the non-Western countries will have, let's call it SWIFT 2, which will be outside of US influence and outside of dollar hegemony. Maybe in the SWIFT 2, my understanding is that probably the transactions will be on local currencies. And in this case, the SWIFT 2 will allow countries like to be more or less secure and also to be secure from US secondary sanctions. Because what is the problem with secondary sanctions? That the US put sanctions on Russia and then knock to any country's doors, even for Armenia's doors, and tell that, okay, you should follow ABC, otherwise you will face secondary sanctions, especially probably financial sanctions. And then if you in any bank in the world, you will go to the bank and say, okay, you are going to be cut from this global financial transmission or transfer system. All banks will say, no, we will do everything. Please do not do that, because this is something like as oxygen for person. This SWIFT is for banks. But if there will be this alternative SWIFT, then, okay, within Western world, you can use the SWIFT system, but the countries between each other, if the US will go and say, okay, you should don't do that, otherwise I will cut from the SWIFT, they will say, okay, but we are not using the SWIFT. There is also alternative. So my understanding is that the key discussions in BRICS is the establishment of this alternative payment system.
I believe it's called BRICS Pay.
Yes, BRICS Pay. There is also idea of BRICS Bridge. But the idea is that there should be alternative system. So it should not be only one system. Like it should be only one person who controls oxygen for 8 billion person. And this,
But Benjamin,
yeah,
sorry for interrupting, but I mean, this all sounds great, but we talked about this before, and I have great reservations about this being successful just merely because it is such a great sanctions tool by the US. I believe Trump has stated that if elected, he will impose a 100% tariff on trade with any country that moves away from a dollar-denominated trade. So that aside, I mean, there seems to be great motivation on part of the U.S. to keep its hegemony in terms of financial payment systems. But most of these countries, also do a great deal of trade with the EU and the West. So it seems like I think the amount of trade between these countries and the West and Europe is more than with each other. So if they are faced with the choice that if you even think about this using this system, then we will cut you off from SWIFT. Do they have enough collective power to still go ahead with it? I'm doubting it a little bit at this point.
okay. First of all, regarding the role of US dollar, I think US itself significantly supported of raising concerns about the role of US dollar, using US dollar as a tool for the sanctions. Because all the countries understand that if you are fully dependent on United States, it means you are United States dollars. It means you are fully dependent on United States, because any moment, for any reason, United States may use this dollar as a stick and put pressure on you. Regarding cutting these countries from the trade with the West, first of all, if we speak with China, I think China is a much more significant player even now, despite all these tariffs which America put starting from Trump era, and also EU now is putting some tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, but still China is a significant trade partner for the EU member countries, even for the United States. So simply to say, okay, I will cut the trade with China, this will ruin global economy. And when I mentioned that China benefited from this current global economic system, but also United States benefited from current global economic system, because this is the only system which allows United States to non-stop borrowing money to increase its debt to, I don't know, like 35 or 36 trillion dollars. But still, average American citizens are enjoying some sort of acceptable living standard. So I'm not sure that, for example, even EU and the United States are ready to cut completely China or some countries off from the trade, because this will be something close to the mutual suicide. Then, if you look into the bilateral trade, now China is the number one trade partner for much more countries than US or even EU as a bloc. I think China is the number one trade partner for more than 125 or 130 countries. Like we can go and check in the Google, but definitely China has much more countries for whom China is a number one trade partner than United States. So I'm not pretty much sure that if the West can say, okay, I will kick out like China, theoretically India or Saudi Arabia or whatever country, we will not do any trade with you, because this will mean the end of this global economic system, which benefits significantly also the West, and based on which the United States became hegemon, not only because the United States had strongest army. So, of course, I'm not an economic expert, and these are very complicated issues to debate, but my understanding is that this global trade is somehow mutual two-edged sword. So you cannot simply say, okay, I will cut trade with China or with other big economies, and they will suffer and I will not suffer. Look, even Russia, which is much smaller economy than China, but EU cut its energy import from Russia, and let's look what's happening in German economy. Very tough situation, especially in automobile industry.
Benjamin, what's the significance of Brazil's veto of Venezuela's membership in BRICS? And also, I really did expect a little more discussion of Azerbaijan's application for membership, and there was almost nothing about that.
Yeah, first of all, regarding Brazil's veto, again, it was not vetoing the full membership, but as far as I understand, based on the Brazil media, Brazil vetoed Venezuela's bid to become partner country. So in theory, it should be 14 countries, 13 plus Venezuela. But according to Brazilian media and expert community, Brazil vetoed and said that, no, I don't want Venezuela to become BRICS partner, because we know that Brazil and many other countries have doubts that recent presidential elections were legal. Brazil does not recognize Maduro as a legitimate president, and Maduro was in Kazan. But this shows us that in BRICS, they somehow tries to emulate the EU and the NATO decision-making process, at least for significant issues, that it should be unanimous decision. Like it means that any full member of BRICS, and now there are 9 full members of BRICS, any full member of BRICS apparently can veto and prevent any country not only becoming full member, but even becoming the BRICS partner country. Regarding Azerbaijan, I also tried to dig deeper to understand what happened, because yes, officially Azerbaijan applied for full BRICS membership, officially. Obviously, because there could be no BRICS expansion, automatically Azerbaijan should become a BRICS partner country. Then I didn't find any news that Azerbaijan withdrew its application, but also I didn't find any news that someone vetoed Azerbaijan application. But from just logical point of view, if Azerbaijan did not withdraw its application to become partner of BRICS, and Azerbaijan was not included in the group of these 13 countries who are going to become partner of BRICS, then the only reasonable explanation is that one or more countries vetoed Azerbaijan becoming a BRICS partner country. But again, you are right. There is no information about the procedure. Like, even I didn't find anything, even like analytical paper, like why Azerbaijan did not become BRICS partner country, why Azerbaijan would like to become. Or at least there is no information that at the last moment, Azerbaijan itself, like President Aliyev said, no, for whatever reason, I decided to withdraw my application. So
I
it's a
haven't heard
little
that
not
either.
clear. It's not a very clear story. But again, if Azerbaijan officially did not withdraw its application, and there are no news that Azerbaijan did that, then the only reasonable explanation why Azerbaijan is not in the list of BRICS partners country is that some or one plus countries did with Azerbaijan the same as Brazil did with Venezuela.
Yeah, so that must have happened privately and not publicly.
Probably yes. For example, for Brasilia, maybe because Brazil's position is very clear that they don't recognize Maduro as a legitimate president. They have doubts about the recent presidential election. Maybe that is why these Brazilian officials leaked this info to the media, that yes, it was Brazil who prevented Venezuela becoming BRICS partner country. We may only guess which BRICS member country for which reasons can theoretically veto or block Azerbaijan's becoming a BRICS partner country. But here we can end the very big area of speculations.
Well, I don't want to end it just yet, because we know that Azerbaijan has a strong partnership with Pakistan, and so does Turkey. So I'm just wondering, I mean, if essentially, since the veto seems to be a acceptable tool to apply at this stage, I'm wondering whether it was India or China even who have concerns about Turkey's expansion into Xinjiang. So,
By the way, regarding India, it
yeah.
was very interesting because the high-level German, one of the quite respected and very famous German newspaper, during the Kazan summit, put a news that India vetoed Turkey's bid to become BRICS partner country. But then this was refuted, and Turkey, we see that Turkey's name at the end of the day appeared in the list of these potential BRICS partners countries. But it was interesting that this very respected Berlin-based newspaper somehow said that according to our internal sources, India vetoed Turkey of becoming partner of BRICS because Turkey supports Pakistan on Kashmir issues. Then it appears that this was not a real news or was a fake news, because there was no official statement or confirmation from Indian side. And as I mentioned, at the end of the day, Turkey appeared in the list. But there was this interesting controversy regarding India. As I mentioned, regarding Azerbaijan application, as of now, we can only speculate because there is a lack of any information to make any analyze. Because to make any assessment or study or research or even predictions, you should have at least some sort of information. If there is a zero credible information, we can only speculate. Theoretically, it could be India, it could be China. Theoretically, it could be Iran also. But for any case, if we jump deep into details, we can say India did it because ABC, but then we can say, but potentially also probably India would not like to do that. Also for Iran, yes, There are many problems between Iran and Azerbaijan, but also we see that two sides are trying to manage the grievances. So, again, as I mentioned, this is a wide area of speculations when many things can be claimed, but few things can be proved.
Okay, so let's come to Armenia, because Pashinyan also was at the BRICS summit, and one of the notable outcomes, or one of the notable things we saw, that he was very chummy with Aliyev. There was even apparently a meeting that did not seem to be pre-planned. In other words, it seemed to have happened very suddenly between the two. So, I just wanted to get your thoughts on Armenia's participation in this summit, and in general, what does BRICS and these changes in the world order from unipolar to multipolar mean for Armenia?
Regarding Armenia's participation, of course, I think Pashinyan arrived probably as last among the leaders, because the full members arrived on October 22, but many leaders arrived on October 23, including President Erdogan, President Aliyev, Kazakhstan president, Kyrgyzstan president, and there was a big reception on the evening in the evening of October 23rd. But Pashinyan instead arrived only in the morning of October 24. Again, probably my understanding is that Pashinyan was the last leader who arrived in Kazan. But in any case, what does it mean, this transformation of world order and emergence of multipolar world for Armenia? I think for Armenia, the key is not even the emergence of multipolar world, but the key is that all predictions, Western predictions, analytical assessments, and a lot of this happened in late 2022, and during the first half or during even the first 9 months of 2023, that Russia is going to be defeated in Ukraine very badly. Then after that, Russia will be forced to completely forget about post-Soviet space. Russia should be focused on its internal problems. There could be destabilization, even coup d'etat, even breakup of Russia. So it will be very tough time for Russia. Russia, again, will have zero resources to have any influence in the post-Soviet space, including in the South Caucasus, which means that any country in the South Caucasus, including Armenia, while designing its policy or calculating its steps, simply could forget about Russia. Like, there is no need to think about, okay, but if I'm doing ABC, what will be Russia's reaction? Is this against Russian interest, or maybe Russia will get angry? So there was such a feeling that forget about Russia, Russia is going to be defeated, and for a very long period, Russia will be focused at trying to keep its internal cohesion. But then, starting late 2023, early 2024, it appeared that the rumors of death of Russia were exaggerated. Let's put it this way. And I think this is impacting, or will impact, or should impact, or probably already has impacted Armenian government foreign policy thinking, because it's absolutely different situation when you kick out Russia from equilibrium and you are making scenarios, and based on these scenarios, you are taking some steps. It's a completely different situation. A, there is no Russia, and situation B, not only there is a Russia, but there is a strong Russia. And my feeling is that starting from late 2022 until late 2023, Armenian government was thinking that in any geopolitical equilibrium, there will be no Russia. So whatever we are doing, we should take into account US interest, EU interest, Azerbaijan interest, or Azerbaijan's reaction, Turkish interest, Iran reaction, but no Russia's interest, because Russia is going to be defeated. Then now I have a feeling that, because it's clear for everyone, including for Americans and Europeans, that Russia is not going to be defeated, at least in the short term. Now, even, when you look into the Western media, all are speaking how to prevent Ukraine catastrophic defeat. Everyone forget about strategic defeat of Russia. Now the key concern is, let's prevent strategic defeat of Ukraine. And this definitely impacts and will continue to impact Armenian foreign policy thinking. And I think from this perspective, we should look into the actions of Armenian government, including Prime Minister Pashinyan's visit to Moscow, taking part in President Putin's informal birthday celebration, Then Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan visit to Moscow to take part in CIS Foreign Minister Summit. Yes, Armenia did not join the two statements, but let's not forget that last time Ararat Mirzoyan was in Moscow in July 2023, when there was this trilateral meeting between Mirzoyan, Bayraktar, and Lavrov somehow to end the blockade of Nagorno-Karabakh. So after July 2023, more than 1 year, Armenian foreign minister did not visit Moscow, while foreign minister visited many times Brussels, Washington, etc. So even the mere fact that foreign minister visited Moscow after the pause of probably 15 months, I guess I would not be mistaken if I will say that probably this was the greatest pause since 1991, any time when Armenian foreign minister didn't visit Moscow for 15 months. All these, including Pashinyan visit to BRICS, even only appearing there on October 24, is a sign that Armenian government also understands that yes, Russia is not going to be defeated and Russian interests should be taken into account in the South Caucasus and in general, also there is a perception that yes, okay, maybe this all talks about US decline or gradual decline. They are a little bit exaggerated, but there is a perception that West is not omnipotent, which means that you cannot calculate your actions based on the idea that, okay, if Americans telling me, okay, do this, and I give you 100% guarantees that Russia will not do that, or I will prevent Azerbaijan from doing this, I will prevent Turkey from doing that. It's becoming clearer and clear that in many parts of the world, even United States are not the omnipotent player with whom you can say, okay, this is the US guarantees or US wants this, so all other players will do however or whatever US wants them to do. So these two trends, Russia is not going to be defeated, at least in short-term perspective, which means that still Russia is a significant factor in South Caucasus, and that United States is not the absolute hegemon. These two things impact Armenian foreign policy thinking and should impact Armenian foreign policy thinking. And again, as I mentioned, the recent actions of Armenian government or Armenian leadership, I think indicates that they start to understand that yes, hopes or fears that okay, Russia is finished, they are not going to be realized.
So as I was listening to the timing that you were describing from 2022 until the end of 2023, the loss of Artsakh, the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh was absolutely the result of the failed calculations and policies by this Armenian government that Russia was going to lose the war and going to be completely out of the picture of world politics.
I would agree because the decision to sign the Prague Statement of October 2022, and I think it's very clear that the October 2022 Prague Statement paved the way for Azerbaijan first to impose blockade. Let's not forget that blockade was imposed only 2.5 months or even 2 months, because first attempt of blockade was taken on December 3 or 4, 2022. Then there was a 1 week, some processes, there was no blockade, and then the full blockade started on December 11 or 12, 2022. And Prague Statement was signed on October 6, 2022. So the fact that Azerbaijan imposed the blockade merely 2 months after Prague Statement and Azerbaijan launched its so-called counter-terrorist operation and realized ethnic cleansing of Armenians less than 1 year, because statement was signed on October 6, 2022, and Azerbaijan launched its aggression against Nagorno-Karabakh, last aggression on September 19, 2023. Again, even this timing is showing that yes, the Prague Statement paved the way for this next 11-month event, which culminated by ethnic cleansing of Armenians. And I do not exclude that Prague Statement itself, Armenian government signed this because they saw that, okay, if Russia is out and the West is telling, okay, guys, probably we are able to protect only Armenia, but we cannot protect also Nagorno-Karabakh, so you should come into terms with Azerbaijan and Turkey, because if there is no Russia, then the only way Armenia can survive is to do whatever Azerbaijan and Turkey wants, satisfy all their demands, and then we may guarantee that, okay, forget about Nagorno-Karabakh, but we will not allow Turkey and Azerbaijan eat Armenia out. Probably this also was one of the factors why Armenian government agreed to sign Prague Statement, recognize Nagorno-Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan without demanding autonomy, without demanding anything.
Yeah. Well, horrible miscalculations.
I mean, miscalculations, to say the least, Asbed.
To say the least. I'll say the least for now because we're running out of time. But to provide a good segue here, Georgia has not been making the same miscalculations. On October 26, parliamentary elections took place in Georgia. And according to official results, the ruling party, Georgian Dream, got around 54% of the votes, and 4 opposition parties overcame the 5% threshold. However, U.S. State Secretary Antony Blinken echoed various Western observers, the OSCE, ODIHR, representatives of NATO Parliamentary Assembly, the PACE, European Parliament, etc., by calling for a full investigation into, quote, breaches of international norms, unquote, during the elections. So, of course, this is also the line that Georgian President Salome Zurabishvili and the opposition parties are pushing, and also alleging, in addition, that there has been Russian interference. There's no proof for something like this. There's no proof to show that there was fraud affecting what they say was 300,000 votes and demanding the annulment of the election results. Anyway, 4 opposition parties cleared the parliamentary threshold, so the Georgian parliament will be composed of what appears to be a healthy 5 political parties, a government that cleared the 50% threshold but did not achieve supermajority. In my opinion, that is a big positive, and a healthy opposition that can build coalitions to influence the government, and an election process that went by and large peacefully. Why were these elections painted as either a choice between Russia and the West or between war and peace?
Thank you for interesting question, Ahmed. So what we saw in Georgia was significant infusion of global geopolitics into the local pattern or local elections. Because under the current government, Georgian Dream came to power in 2012. It was Georgian Dream who signed the association agreement with DCFTA with the European Union in 2014. It was under Georgian Dream when Georgia got visa-free regime, I believe in 2016. And it was under Georgian Dream when Georgia officially became or obtained the candidate status to the membership of the European Union in December 2023. And Georgian Dream was always telling that, yes, what is written in Constitution, European integration, this is valid. And even in their current electoral program is written very clear that Georgian Dream will do everything to bring Georgia to becoming EU member by 2030. However, due to the West-Russia confrontation and Georgia's government policy, like not to fully join anti-Russian sanctions and get economic benefits, both from Russian relocations and also from re-exports to Russia, and Georgia, like Armenia, by the way, registered significant economic growth in 2022, 2023, and in the first half of 2024. But because for many in the West, now the life is white and black, so if you are not clearly anti-Russian, you are automatically becoming anti-Western, and there is no middle ground that, okay, I am not anti-Western, I am not pro-Russian, but also I don't want to be part of the war against Russia, the economic war or direct war. Because of this perception, there was growing criticism against Georgian government, and then Georgian government adopted this law on the transparency of foreign influence, which many dub as a Russian law. Also, Georgian government was telling that, okay, guys, but the same laws are also in the United States and some other Western countries. But at the end of the day, this became something like a geopolitical struggle. Opposition were telling, look, Georgian Dream is a Russian puppets or KGB agents, and they are trying to bring back Georgia into Russia's orbit. While Georgian government was speaking about the global party of the war, telling that this opposition, and let's not forget that at least 2 of these 4 parties, they are members of former ruling party, UNM, United Nations Movement, led by former President Mikhail Saakashvili, who came to power as a result of Rose Revolution in late 2003 and was Georgian president from 2004 until 2013. And also this is like domestic pattern between like supporters of Bidzina Ivanishvili and supporters of Mikhail Saakashvili. So the Georgian Dream was telling that, okay, these UNM or UNM-affiliated forces, they are foreign agents who does not serve Georgian people interest, and they are ready for the sake of US or European interest to drive Georgia into the war. And even they put electoral posters in Tbilisi in some other Georgian cities showing like the destroyed one Ukrainian city and peaceful and developed Tbilisi. The message was very clear. Okay, dear Georgians? Do you want to have the war? Do you want to die for Europe or United States? Or you want to enjoy a relatively peaceful life? Regarding the election results, from my perspective, it was clear that Georgian Dream has significant support. And even the opposition exit polls or opposition surveys were giving Georgian Dream like 42, 45%, which is a significant number for any ruling party. Okay, now they secured 54%, not 45. Again, I was not in Georgia. I didn't take part in election observation mission, so I'm not in a position to say anything about any irregularities. But even if you look into the Western International Observer Mission statements, I read carefully the statement by OSCE ODIHR, European Parliament Mission, NATO Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe Mission. Yes, there are a lot of irregularities, but there is no clear verdict that elections should not be recognized. And if you look into the statement of Secretary Blinken, statement of Charles Michel, statement of 13 EU member country ministers, again, they are criticizing, they are telling that irregularities should be investigated, but there is no clear statement that we don't recognize elections because elections were fundamentally rigged. There is no such statement.
Interestingly, I believe that, like you said, they are recognizing, despite some reservations, but they are still pushing the Georgian opposition to take a more radical stance on it than they themselves are.
I agree. And of course, there is also no official congratulation from the Western countries. As of now, I believe first it was Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who congratulated in late October 26. Then on Sunday, October 27, first President Aliyev, then Prime Minister Pashinyan congratulated Georgian Dream. And on October 29, President Erdogan joined congratulations, and Chinese Foreign Ministry stated that we are satisfied with successful Georgian election, but it was not like leader level congratulations from President Xi. And yes, opposition organized a rally on Monday, October 28th, but definitely this was not too as many people as to say that, okay, some sort of revolution or something may happen in Georgia. So let's see, but my understanding is that two factors played significant role here. First, a relatively economic growth. Yes, there was also inflation, and still there is an inflation in Georgia, but there was a significant economic growth, 2022, 2023, part of 2024, and government was able to deliver the message that this economic growth is because we didn't impose sanctions on Russia, or we didn't join EU and US economic sanctions on Russia. So look, if opposition will come, and the opposition was very clear that we immediately will impose and will join all European and US sanctions, and government was telling people, more or less, your ordinary life is relatively in good conditions, or living standards are growing, because we didn't join American and European sanctions. So do you want to suffer economically? Okay, vote for the opposition. And the second key message, that, okay, if opposition comes to power, then under the pressure of the United States and the European Union, they will open the second front against Russia. And the message was, look, in 1991, Ukraine's territory was up to 600,000 square kilometers, and Ukraine's population was more than 40 million. And even in February 2022, Ukraine population was more than 30 million, and territories under Russia-Ukraine government control was more than 500,000 square kilometers. So they were telling, theoretically even, okay, let's assume Ukraine can't afford itself to lose hundreds of thousands kills, 10 million young people leaving Ukraine, losing hundreds of thousands of square kilometers, but still there will be Ukraine. But Georgia cannot afford itself. So if there will be any sort of hostilities between Georgia and Russia, this will be end of Georgian statehood very quickly. So these two messages, I think, resonated well. Again, I'm not in a position to say there were no irregularities or what level of irregularities or scale of irregularities, but one thing is clear, that even based on opposition exit polls, Georgian Dream more or less had 40-45% support, which is significant support for any governing party in any country in the world.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But also, Zurabishvili, in her interview to, I think, some media, said that all the exit polls were saying the opposition had 70%. I could not find that number anywhere. So it was pretty interesting about the allegations. All things that you said, aside, do you believe that there is potential for violence or even political instability in Georgia as a result of this standoff?
We say in politics and geopolitics, never say never. So there is a potential for everything everywhere. But if you speak about likelihood, as of now, I see likelihood quite low that there will be some revolution in Georgia or violence or, God forbid, civil war and etc. As of now, likelihood is quite low. It's not zero, but it's quite low.
And also, have you ever been on an Armenian carousel, Benjamin?
Personally, I never took part, and this was very strange statement that, okay, what happened in Georgia was Armenian carousel. Okay, maybe Zurabishvili remembered something from, like, I don't know, 2008, 2012, or 2017 parliamentary elections of Armenia, but also some pro-Western figures in Georgia stated that, look, and because the Georgian Dream, the most vote Georgian Dream received in Armenian populated areas, for example, in Ninos Minda, Halkalaki, it was more than 85%, like 88, 89. And some pro-Western figures in Georgia started now also to use this, telling that, look, these Armenians, they were supporting pro-Russian government and etc. So I'm not sure that this was a smart move by President Salome Zurabishvili to mention Armenia in this context.
Yeah, interestingly, I think Georgian Dream was the only party that actively campaigned in the regions.
Yes, also according to my understanding, yes, like opposition was active in Tbilisi, and at the end of the day, I guess overall in Tbilisi, Georgian Dream got like 41, 42%, but outside Tbilisi and outside few big cities, like Tbilisi, Batumi, Kutaisi, outside these three big cities, yes, opposition was quite passive. Maybe because of lack of financial resources or administrative resources, human resources, but we had what we had.
Okay, well, one final question, Benjamin. What are the implications of all this for Armenia?
Okay, if Georgian Dream remains in power, and as I mentioned, likelihood is low that they will not remain in power, it means that Georgian government will continue its current course. It means that the tensions will remain between Georgia and the West, and very slow drift from only pro-Western or fully pro-Western foreign policy will continue. And I think as other players in the regions, they are not favored of the more Western influence or engagement in the South Caucasus. I mean, Azerbaijan, Iran, Russia, Turkey, they are not fond of to see more West in the region. I think this will somehow also force Armenian government, especially given what we discussed, that Russia is not going to disappear from South Caucasus, and you should take into account Russia's interest in any calculations. I think this probably will result in some readjustment in Armenian foreign policy. I personally call Armenian foreign policy for last 2 years Western-focused diversification. Why diversification? Because it's policy of adding new partners, and not only in the West, for example, India, but also there was outreach to Saudi Arabia, but it's Western-focused because main efforts have been taken to deepen relations with the European Union, to sign new partnership agenda somewhere in early 2025, and also with the United States. So that is why I call it Western-focused diversification, what Armenian government was doing probably starting from since late 2022. I believe that as a result of all these developments, including not defeat of Russia and also the victory of Georgian Dream, probably, again, never say 100% anything, probably Armenian government will readjust its foreign policy. Again, it will be diversification, but probably there will be less Western focused. Let's put it this way.
So as you see a little more complementarity in Georgia's foreign policy towards Russia and the West, do you see it possibly integrating into the Eurasian Economic Union?
For a short-term perspective, no, but what I don't exclude that starting from spring 2025, Georgia and Russia may start public or clandestine negotiations regarding the status of South Ossetia. Not Abkhazia, because Abkhazia is very important for Russia. It's a Black Sea. Theoretically, Russia may establish even alternative military base in Abkhazia, military base for its Black Sea fleet. But I don't exclude that starting from spring 2025, there will be some sort of context between Russia and Georgia to somehow solve the issue of status of South Ossetia and bring South Ossetia back under the Georgia's jurisdiction, especially given that population of South Ossetia numbers are very low. Like during summers, it's maximum 35, 37,000 people living there. And during winters, many people went to North Ossetia, which is a republic within the Russian Federation. And in winter, there's only 25,000 people remain in South Ossetia. So again, I don't exclude that negotiations will start somehow to solve the issue of South Ossetia and even to withdraw Russian military base from South Ossetia. Because Russia now has military bases both in South Ossetia and Abkhazia. But again, the South Ossetia can be discussed, the status of South Ossetia, including the withdrawal of Russian military base from South Ossetia.
All right. Let's leave it there for today. Thank you, Benyamin, for your thoughts. We really appreciate you sharing your insight with us.
Thank you, Benjamin.
Thank you, Asbed, and thank you, Hovik. As always, pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me.
That was our show today. This episode was recorded on October 29, 2024. We've been talking with Dr. Benyamin Poghosyan, who is a senior fellow at APRI Armenia, a Yerevan-based think tank, and he's also the chairman of the Center for Political and Economic Strategic Studies. For more information on the participants in this episode, please check out the show notes for this episode at podcasts.groong.org/episode number. I'm Asbed Bedrossian.
And this is Hovik Manucharyan.
Please follow us on social media and follow us everywhere you get your Armenian news. The links are in the show notes. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon.